The Washington Capitals. All right. So last year, 40 wins, 31 losses. We don't count overtime losses in this podcast. Last year's power play ranking, 18th. Not bad, 20.6%. All right. Hang in there, guys. This is a long list. Who's in? Pierre-Luc Dubois, Mangiapane, Chirkren, Matrois, Duhamel, and Logan Thompson. It's quite a list there. Who's out? Obe Kubel, Malenstein, Jensen, and Darcy Kemper. So quite a bit of action there, I think, for the better, if you ask me. Moving on to the player tiers. You would think after all those changes, there might be a player in Tier 1, 91 plus points, but there isn't. There isn't a player in Tier 2 either, 80 to 90 points, 0. Finally, in Tier 3, we're getting some traction here. Tier 3, we have 2 players. Let's start with the great 8, Alex Ovechkin. Do we see him hitting 70, 79 points? And more importantly, is he going to how close will he get to Gretzky's record?
He's going to get close. He's going to get very close. Do you remember last year, the beginning of the season, where we were thinking, is Alex Ovechkin even going to hit 20 goals? With that terrible beginning of the season he had? Now, let's remember, he's a year older. So I think that makes him 39 this year, if I'm not mistaken.
He will start the season at 39.
At 39. And listen, last year he had a terrible beginning of the season. He still finished with 31 goals. Like this, see, generational talent, this is what a generational talent is. So, I hope he gets really close. I don't know if he's going to be able to beat, because I think he needs 42 goals to beat Gretzky.
Come on. I should have researched that. But
you could have told us that you were going to ask that.
He's got 2 seasons left, and even if he splits 20, I'm sure he could have 2 20-goal seasons, 2 21-goal seasons, right? So if you ask me, he'll get it. Only a matter of time before Matthews takes over, but that's a story for another day.
Stop it. I think he's gonna get his goals. He's gonna get over 30 goals. He might even hit 40 goals this year. And he'll be between the 70 to 79 points, just because I think there's a little bit more talent than him around there. So
there it is.
Yeah, he's 41 goals. Oh man, I hope he hits it. That's gonna be like,
I think he'll hit it. I don't know if he'll hit it this year, but I think he'll hit it.
So listen, I think 77.9 I think is a good projection for him, just because I think he's better surrounded. Team wise, it's not only him and Dylan Strome. There's a few more players that are possibly could be a threat on offense. So yeah, I feel 70-79 is the perfect bracket.
One thing you'll know for sure is that no matter what, he's still getting 96% of the power play time.
97.
Have you ever seen that before? 96%. 96.7, 96.5, 93, 92, 90%. Like he's always PP.
And he's always
there.
Always going to be in that one spot where he's going to get all his goals.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, he doesn't start the year like he did last year. I was offered him in Lama, and I was fighting for first place with Dan. And if I would have traded for him, but the price was too high, it would have been interesting, because he actually put up all those points at the end of the year. And I had felt like he was finished, right? So I think he's going to break the record. I don't know if I doubt it's going to be this year, to be honest with you. But it's going to be fun to watch Washington games just for that.
If he gets close, it's going to be so much fun to watch hockey this year.
And sometimes something like that could just give the player enough boost to get going, But I've seen him training. He seems to have slimmed down a little bit. Last year, I think it was obvious to everyone he was a bit... I won't say overweight, but he wasn't healthy, let's say,
A little heavy.
So I expect him to be better. Just naturally having better players around him should help him. And at the same time, it's going to reduce his ice time, and I think that could help him as well. So, that's our first player in Player 3. Moving on to the next player in Player 3, which was his center for most of the time. 70 to 79 points. We have Dylan Strome projected there. It's a nice amount for Dylan Strome. Nick, lead us off here.
Well, I mean, Dylan Strome had 67 points last year, playing 82 games. He is a nice revelation for Washington. He's in his prime. He's 27 years old. and he's just entered his prime. So he's going to be relevant for this team moving forward. I don't see them taking him off Ovechkin's line. So he's still going to be somebody to own in fantasy and has the ability to hit that 70-point plateau. I just don't know if it's going to be more than that necessarily, but I like him as a 70-point player. I think that's very fair that he continues this pace.
I agree with Nick. I don't see him over the 79 point. I see him mid 70. He's been flirting with it the past 2 years. I think this year, especially with the motivation of getting over that record, he'll hit the early 70 points.
Yeah, he's never paced for it before, so maybe this is it. I think this might be... No, that's not true. I was going to say it's one of the better teams he's been on, but I think he had a pretty good team in Chicago at one point. Anyhow, regardless, we do see a little boost in production for Dylan Strome, who in fact did have a career year in points, 67, and a point pace. All right, moving on to the next tier 4. We have one player,
the one and only. I want to trade.
Pierre-Luc Dubois, ladies and gentlemen, projected 60 to 69 points. I'm curious to know your take on this. Let's start with Vince, who's had him in a couple of leagues, I think.
He pisses
on
me
and
off.
off.
He pisses me off.
You still own him, don't you?
Yeah, of course I still own. What am I going to do? Get rid of him?
For pennies on the dollar,
Yeah,
maybe?
Exactly. Like, what's the point? You're just hoping that this is the year where his head is screwed on properly and he's just going to want to play for whatever team he's playing for and not ask for another trade. I mean, you know the kid has the talent. You know he's young. But does he have the desire to be that go-to player that everybody wants him to be? And I'm not sure about that anymore. At one point, when a player asks for one trade out of a team, you're like, okay, fine, I'll ask. You're given it. But, I mean, it's what, 3 trades he asked for now? Or LA?
2. He went from Columbus to Winnipeg, and he signed LA as a free agent.
And LA, he didn't ask for a trade. They just decided that they need to get rid of him.
Yeah, they bought him out.
Yeah.
After 1 year.
They didn't buy him out. They just traded him.
They traded him. They traded him. Yeah.
For pennies on the dollar.
Pennies on the dollar,
of course. Exactly. Just to get rid of his contract. So he never flirted with, like, there's 1 year maybe in Winnipeg where he flirted with a 70-point season. So I don't see him. I see him. Listen, if he hits 60, Washington should be giving him a raise. Because
no, $8.5 million for a 60-point player.
But yeah, I don't see him. I especially his first year in the team. Yes, he's coming here to prove something, but I don't see, especially with the players around that he'll be playing with. I mean, he'll probably get the PP1 with Ovi and Carlson and Strome, but I don't see him hitting more than 60 to 70.
I mean, if he is embarrassed enough, I hope that he starts producing, but he's kind of fallen into that category of second line center at best.
100%.
At best, a second line center. He's definitely not that prolific number one center that everybody was hoping that he would be when he was younger. We've said a lot about Dubois on this podcast, so I don't know if I really want to spend time. But he's kind of I would say he's running out of chances, but he has a guaranteed contract for the next infinity years at $8.5 million, right? So I just hope he produces for Washington out of the fact that he should be embarrassed.
Was this like, if we look at Washington, this is a low risk move for them, right? Besides the salary at 8.5, this is a low risk move that they made here, making this trade with LA.
I think it was a good trade for Washington.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I just, it's because of the fact that Washington is looking to give support for Ovi, that they needed a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois because he's a potential top sixer, and they didn't have many top sixers in this team anymore.
No, exactly.
Right? Wilson has taken a few steps back now. He's no longer putting up the points that he was before.
Backstrom took 30 steps back and went back home.
Backstrom, unfortunately, injuries played a role in Backstrom's career, and
I think this is a great situation for him.
it's a nice little retool.
Yeah,
They did a good job, the Washington Capitals. Honestly, it's low risk, low reward. Doesn't mean it'll work. I mean, they're still an average team, but I think they're an average team that could compete for the playoff spot. And we'll get to that in that comment in Dom's model. But I think this situation kind of fits him well. I wouldn't be surprised for a major bounce back from Dubois this year. I really think it's look, Columbus was a torch situation. Winnipeg is a very difficult place to play in, and not everybody can thrive in Winnipeg. Not necessarily because of just the city, just the market, everything that goes with it. Washington, LA, forget it. It was just a disaster. That's not an easy system to go into, especially a player like Dubois. So I think now in Washington, I think he has he could have a huge weight off his shoulders. The whole contract talk is over. He's not even a thought because it's all about Ovechkin and the record, and he's just there to supplement. He's not being asked to be like a major point producer, and I think that'll help him a lot. You guys mentioned the power play. He'll definitely get power play 1, and he's going from 15 minutes of ice time. I think that goes up to 18 with Washington. So I could see a boost in production, him flirting with 60 points for sure. All right, sorry. So moving on. That does it for our tier 4. The next player we're going to talk about in the power play defenseman, I'm curious to know if has any chance at all to hit 60 again. But John Carlson, essentially not their only, actually, this is, we'll group this together. We'll group this conversation.
Wait. Number 1 defenseman?
No, not anymore. Doesn't produce enough anymore to be a number 1 defenseman.
But was?
Was, yes. Yes, he was. Okay, so I'm gonna lead this to you guys, and I think the best discussion to have here is maybe a group discussion. But they've added Chychrun, they've had Sandin, and they have John Carlson. I don't see John Carlson losing power play 1 time. Where do you guys feel here? And let's talk both about. I mean, I don't see Sandin taking that much of a jump, but what do you guys think of Carlson and Chychrun? Who's the lead dog? For how long? And what can we expect point-wise from both of them? Any of them at all have a chance at 60?
Well, John Carlson absolutely has a chance at 60. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because of the fact that, A, he is the most prolific offensive defenseman that they have. I like Chychrun. I like Chychrun a lot, and I think that, his age, 26, he's still in his prime, and maybe just entering his prime. I think that he is a possible 50-point defenseman. But John Carlson is and has been a much more prolific defenseman than that. So I don't see him necessarily taking a step back from that this year. Maybe eventually Chychrun will be the guy that takes over. Sandin maybe as power play 2 eventually. I traded for Sandin because I did expect Sandin to take a step forward in his second year or second full year in Washington, let's say, because he had a really bad year last year. But John Carlson's still the stud here.
Yeah, I think the Chychrun move is more of them realizing that Sandin cannot be the defenseman they want than John Carlson losing his number 1 role. I still believe John Carlson has talent, even with his age. Like Nick said, he was a prolific defenseman, and he still is. So I just think Chychrun is the next guy up, whereas before they thought was Sandin. So the whole acquiring Chychrun is they're getting ready that if Carlson has to minimize his minutes or whatnot, Chychrun is the guy who's going to take over.
When Carlson, I think it was the year before. Last year, Carlson played 82 games, but when Carlson was injured 2 years ago, he only played 40. Sandin was actually pretty productive on the power play, but wasn't really productive enough 5-on-5. And what Chychrun is going to do is he's going to reduce John Carlson's 25, almost 26 minutes on ice to probably 23. And I think that's going to do him wonders. And it'll reduce also the 71% power play rate that he's on. He plays for 71% of the time. And I think John Carlson was just doing way too much. And the older he gets, the more he was doing, which is usually should be the opposite. So I see that balancing out and possibly giving him more points as well. Any final thoughts on defensemen? Or shall we move on to the goalie tandem here? All right, let's move on to the goalie tandem. So Charlie Lindgren, who was their best goalie last year with a save percentage of .911 and a goals against average of 2.67 last year, Goals save above expected at 5-on-5, 21st in the league. For Charlie Lindgren, I think that's very successful. The newly acquired Logan Thompson from Vegas. So last year with the Vegas Golden Knights had a save percentage of 908, a goals against average of 2.7. Very similar numbers to the Charlie Lindgren. And a goal save above expected at 5-on-5, he ranked 30th. Who gets the nod here? I mean, it's got to be Thompson, right?
I don't know. Listen, I think at some point Thompson will take over. I think there's still, I mean, for what Charlie Lindgren did to Washington for Washington last year, which is basically bring them into the playoffs. I think he's still going to have the first crack at proving he's a number one goaltender. But it wouldn't surprise me that as soon as he starts his struggles, that Logan Thompson will come in and take over that role. Not that Logan Thompson has proven that he can be a number one goaltender, but I still think that he is better than Lindgren.
It's hard to really compare because we don't know what Logan Thompson could do in front of Washington's defense. Vegas's defense was quite good. So we'll see now with a weaker defense in front of him if he's still going to be able to put up decent numbers or not. The way I see it is that Charlie Lindgren played a great season last year. It was his first season that he was like the number one bona fide starter playing 50 games. And his quality start percentage was 56% quality starts. That's great. Not phenomenal, but good for Charlie Lindgren numbers, I should say. So I'm just not so sure that he has this magic again. Doing it 2 years in a row is a lot harder than a one-hit wonder that he might have been last year. He's going to share time. He's 30 years old. He's not. It's not like he's a young buck anymore, right? So if he does it again this year, that's a big win for Washington. Logan Thompson, I kind of have more faith in Logan Thompson as well, but like I said, it's hard to compare because he played on Vegas team, which was a stacked team last year. So we'll see. We'll see. He also played 46 games last year, so it's still a pretty big sample size. And he had 908 save percentage, 56 quality start percentage, so kind of similar.
Yeah, I think the ideal thing for Washington in this case is almost like a 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
They both need to play a lot of games, and I think it'll balance out and solidify their team play. To give either of them a number one shot of like 56 plus games, it's pushing it. That's how I see it. All right, so let's to final thoughts. Anything you want to add before final thoughts?
Did you do
Top
any
prospects?
of the prospects?
Oh yes, actually, one of my this guy has grown to be one of my, I think, favorite prospects. So I'll start with him. His name is Ryan Leonard. Wish the Habs would have drafted him, but we'll see how it pans out. Anyhow, so they have Ryan Leonard, Ivan Miroshnichenko, who saw some games in the NHL last year, didn't look too shabby. Andrew Cristal, small, skilled forward, drafted in the second round, I believe. Hendrix Lapierre, who will be a full-timer this year, I believe. Played quite a bit last year. This time should be a third-line player. And Parasak, who's a little similar, I believe, to Cristal. Very skilled. I'm not sure of his size. But a nice, decent prospect pool with one, I believe, I'll say one elite prospect, and then the rest I feel like more second tier, but I think they can all be very legit NHLers. Tell me about these guys. And Nick, I know you own Ryan Leonard. Do you want to start with a word on him, or?
Well, out of all these guys, I think Ryan Leonard is the only guy that could be a top line player. Miroshnichenko had his battles with cancer, unfortunately, but he seems to be over them now, which is a great positive. And he's already playing some NHL games. I'm just not sure if he's really a top-line player, more of a second, third-line person. Andrew Cristal has all the talent in the world. I own him as well in Lama. But maybe more of a specialist. So we'll kind of see how he develops here. He still has some time. He's not going to be fantasy relevant this year. Hendrix Lapierre is the only one that's fantasy relevant this year. and he's most likely taking a step back if Dubois is playing second line center. So I'm not so sure anymore how fantasy relevant he'll be this year. If Dubois moves to the wing, however, I mean, Lapierre could end up playing second line. So we'll have to see training camps. And Parashak, very cerebral player, high intelligence player, has some skill as well, but years away. Great for Dynasty.
Yeah, I feel with the age of Dylan Strome, the age of Dubois, Chikrim, I think we can say that Washington is in the middle of a retool rebuild type of thing because they got young players that are NHL stable, and then the ones they have here, I see Ryan Leonard. I obviously see him in a top 6 role, but Miroshchenko and Cristal could hit that top 6 depending on how they develop, and if not, they can still I don't see them as fourth line players. They're third line players, so I feel their prospects aren't too bad. Hendrik Lapierre, I think this is the year where he needs to show something. I'm not saying 50 points, but needs to show that he can handle staying in the NHL. And like I said, the prospects are there. We haven't spoken about him. Mangiapane, is he a big add to this team?
Secondary scoring,
Which they didn't have last year.
which they didn't have last year, so that part's big, but not necessarily fantasy relevant, I think, anymore.
If Washington will be successful, he'll have to hit 50 points,
Okay. Which is not bad
which
for
I
a
think
second
is,
line.
is fair to predict for him, to project.
Okay.
20 goals, 35 is 20 goals, 40.
He's only hit 50 points once in his career, though.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that it's very hard to project him as a 60-point player in our tier
No,
pools.
I wouldn't
Right.
project him in 60.
But maybe a waiver wire ad type guy. I
Yeah,
don't see him getting 35
agreed.
goals either.
He'll be a good waiver wire pickup when he goes on the
if
streak.
if he plays with Dubois and they get a good chemistry going.
Yeah.
Before we move on to final thoughts, I just want to touch on Lapierre, who had his best quarter of the season was his final quarter. In 22 games, he had 10 points, 25 shots on goal. His power play time increased to 2 minutes, and he barely had any power play time before that. And his total ice time started with 8:20 and went all the way to 13. So that's a nice progression you want to see. Yeah, is there a little bit more of a traffic jam now, less opportunity maybe, but I kind of like where he was trending. And one last prospect who we forgot about, Cole Hudson. I think he's nice. He's a nice addition in the pipeline there. I think he's going to be what they were hoping Sandin would be when they acquired him.
Right. I mean, let's not totally poo-poo Sandin completely here. The fact is that it was his first year in a new location.
No, second.
When did they acquire him?
2 years ago.
Was it?
Yeah.
I believe Junior's right.
I know because I had him, and he Carlson had gotten injured and he was getting points for me
Oh, that's
And
right.
then last year,
But, well,
Carlson
yeah,
played.
I mean, they
was
kind of acquired
mid-season.
him mid-season.
mid-season. Yeah.
It wasn't so. His first full year was still Washington in 23-24, and he kind of had a down year.
And he's not a bad player. He's still an NHL player.
Yeah, I mean, I see him as a 35 to 40 point defenseman. I don't see him more than that.
Yeah, just more of an assist guy. I don't think he has like the tools
Yeah,
to shoot.
yeah.
But anyhow, it was just interesting. I really like the Cole Hudson addition in the second round last year. So this year, and that does it for the Washington Capitals. Final thoughts. Well, Dom's model had them ranked third best offseason. Some serious upgrades on D with Matt Roy. I think it's Matt Roy. Anyway, Matt Roy and Chikrin. Two top six additions on forward with Dubois and Mangiapane, and two on the top four defensemen. So it's an average team that looks a little better, and an average team that these moves make them playoff contenders.
A team that could hit the playoffs, probably still eliminated in round one.
In 4 games.
All right. Well, I think
it's still a very interesting team though to follow this year.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fun to see Dubois and how he does.
it's an interesting division, guys.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, the
But-
Metro has been fun
But
to
with
talk
Washington
about.
itself, if Ovi gets on a hot streak, he can propel the whole
Yeah.
team to follow him, right? And the closer he gets to that record, the more players will be motivated to get there. It's just
It's gonna have to be a good start.
Yeah,
They'll have to come out of
100%.
the gates with like a very good start. I feel good. Like if Ovi feels good about himself, the team's gonna be. I agree. I agree 100% with that statement.